The comms crackled like dry bone under boot, pulling Captain Lena Ortiz from the dim hum of her dropship's cabin. "Ortiz, this is Lunar Command. Outpost Delta 7's gone dark. Repeat, full blackout. Sensors picking up unauthorized signatures. Cathari looks like they're pulling heat from the regolith extractors." Lena's jaw tightened, her gloved fingers drumming the armrest. Luna's mining outposts were supposed to be untouchable, relics of the old quarantine treaties that had kept the stars at arm's length from Earth. The Cathari Dominion had probed the boundaries before with proxy skirmishes and veiled threats. But this? A direct raid? It smelled like escalation, the kind that left craters and ghosts. "Copy that," she said, voice steady as she keyed her helmet's display. The tactical overlay bloomed. Delta 7, a cluster of pressurized habs and drill rigs on the moon's far side, now a red blip amid flickering anomalies. Her team, 8 spec ops from Earth's planetary defense unit, stirred in their harnesses, faces shadowed under tech helms. No chatter, just the shared tension of men and women who'd seen too many borders bleed. The dropship shuddered through re-entry burn, Luna's gray expanse swelling in the forward viewport. Lena's mind flicked to Mateo, her brother, digging strata samples in the Andes. Civilian life, he called it, safe. But if the Cathari were testing the line here, what stopped them from pushing dirtside? They hit the surface with a jolt, dust plumes blooming around the landing skids. Lena was first out, rifle up, her boots crunching regolith as the squad fanned into a wedge. The outpost loomed ahead, twisted metal skeletons, their airlocks venting atmosphere in white ghosts, bodies strewn like discarded tools, miners in ruptured suits, their faces frozen in the vacuum's merciless stare. "Secure the perimeter," Lena ordered, voice low over the squad net. Eyes on extraction points, they hit and ran. "Find me their trail." Sergeant Hale, no, not Hale, that was Arun back on Earth. Corporal Reyes swept left, his scanner pinging debris. "Captain, shuttle wreckage, half a click north, Cathari markings. Looks like they clipped a ridge on pullout." Lena nodded, pulse steady despite the rage coiling in her gut. Too late again. Like that evac on the border world, families choking in the holds while she called abort. She pushed the memory down, focused on the now. The squad advanced, mag boots clamping to the surface, weaving through the carnage. Plasma scores scarred the hab walls, efficient kills, no looting, just erasure. The shuttle was a mangled bird, its hull breached, thrusters cold. Cathari script glowed faintly on the fuselage, Imperial Eagle etched in iridescent alloy. Movement inside, a figure in a flight suit staggering from the cockpit, arm clutched to his side. "Contact," Reyes barked. Lena raised her rifle. "Halt! Hands where I can see them." The alien froze, then complied slowly, his 4-fingered hands lifting. Tall, scaled skin shimmering under the harsh lunar light. Eyes like polished obsidian. Not a grunt. The insignia on his shoulder marked him officer class. Envoy, maybe. Liaison bullshit from the old talks. "You're on human soil," Lena said, advancing with her squad, closing the noose. "Surrender, or we end this here." He straightened, pain etching lines around his mouth. "I yield. Envoy Rowan Talisar, Cathari Dominion. My team is lost. The raid was reconnaissance only." Lena's lip curled. Reconnaissance, as if that justified the bodies. She signaled Reyes to cuff him. Human restraints, adaptive alloy that bit into alien flesh. "You'll answer for it, dirtside. Load him up." As they hauled him toward the dropship, Rowan's gaze lingered on the outpost ruins, something unreadable in it. Regret? Calculation? Lena didn't care. This was the line crossed, and she'd make them pay for every inch. Back on Earth, the debrief hit like a pressure drop. Lena stood in the war room bunker beneath the Rockies, the air thick with recycled chill and the faint ozone of holoscreens. Her suit still dusted with lunar grit, she watched General Vasquez pace, his face a map of old scars. "Envoy Talisar's in holding," Vasquez said, tapping the central display. A 3D render of Luna spun, red overlays marking the raid sites. Claims it was a rogue element, bullshit, Dominion fingerprints all over it. Lena crossed her arms, the weight of her sidearm a familiar anchor. They crippled their own shuttle getting out. Sloppy for recon. Means they're testing us, seeing if we'll blink. The door hissed open, admitting Dr. Aaron Hale. He was a wiry man, mid-40s, with dust-caked boots from his latest core sample run and a tablet clutched like a shield. His eyes, sharp behind wire rims, flicked to Lena. Recognition, but no warmth. They'd crossed paths in Sims, his geo strats informing her ops, but Arun kept his distance, buried in rock layers and alien tech ghosts. "Captain," Arun said, nodding curtly as he slotted his tablet into the HoloLink. "General, I've got prelims from orbital intercepts. The Cathari weren't just grabbing ore." The display shifted, Earth's globe blooming with subsurface grids. Arun zoomed in, lines of seismic data pulsing like veins. They're mapping fault lines, deep ones, San Andreas extensions, the mid-Atlantic ridge, even mantle plumes under the Indo-Australian plate. Population centers sit right on the bullseyes. New York, Mumbai, the Ring of Fire cities. Vasquez leaned in. Terraforming probes? They've done that to fringe worlds. Worse, Arun replied, his voice edged with that quiet intensity Lena had come to respect. He traced a holographic plume, colors shifting from blue to angry red. Cathari tech exploits geothermal instability. We've seen remnants on their conquered moons. Induced quakes to crack crusts, release resources. If they land, they could trigger cascades. Billions at risk. Lena's stomach knotted. Mateo's digs were near the Nazca plate, harmless geology turned weapon. They're not here for the moon rocks. Earth's the prize. Arun met her gaze, a flicker of shared dread. He wanted to weaponize the planet's bones, prove its geology a shield, but she saw the hesitation in his stance. The scientist's war with the soldier's need. Far beyond the quarantine boundary, in the shadowed bridge of the Cathari battlecruiser, Vexar, Admiral Serex Val Kor surveyed his officers with the cold precision of a scalpel. The chamber thrummed with the low pulse of warp coils, stars streaking past viewports like fleeing prey. Serex's scales gleamed under the dim lights. His uniform a tapestry of campaign bars earned in the Dominion's endless sprawl. "Report," he said, voice a silken rasp that brooked no delay. His exec, a hulking sub-commander named Vrel, straightened. "The Luna incursion succeeded, Admiral. Recon teams secured samples. Regolith isotopes, structural scans. Losses minimal, though one shuttle was damaged in withdrawal. The humans captured envoy Talisar." Serex's mandibles clicked softly, irritation veiled. Talisar, that idealistic fool, sidelined for questioning the purity of expansion. A liability now, but useful bait. "Frame it as a limited test," Serex ordered, turning to the comms array. "Transmit to the boundary envoys. A diplomatic dispute over quarantine drift. Demand reparations for human aggression in neutral space." Vrel nodded, fingers dancing over controls. "And the follow-up?" Serex's eyes narrowed on the tactical holo, Earth's blue marble, a tempting vulnerability. "Assemble the Vanguard fleet, 3 cruisers, support wings. Position at the boundary under diplomatic cover, probe their resolve. Force the overreaction. When they lash out, we justify stabilization. The Dominion claims what the weak cannot hold." The officers murmured assent, but Serex felt the undercurrent of doubt. Empathy was a chain. He'd severed his long ago. Earth would break, or it would serve. Back in the bunker, the orders came swift as a blade. Vasquez's face filled Lena's secure line from Command Central, the general's expression granite hard. "You're greenlit, Ortiz. Joint Task Force. Your Spec Ops Corps, Hale's Geo Team. Engineers from Kovacs's demo unit. Mandates clear. Covert ops to turn any Cathari landing into a meat grinder. Make it cost them so much they pull back. Rethink the quarantine as a wall, not a welcome mat." Lena stood in the ops bay, her team assembling gear around her, rifles chambering, packs stuffing with demo charges. "Understood, sir. We'll bleed them on our soil. Deterrence only," Vasquez added, a warning in his tone. "No escalations off-world. Earth's the line." The line went dead, leaving Lena staring at the bulkhead. Deterrence. After Luna? It felt like whispering to a storm. They brought Roan to her in the holding wing, the alien's wrists bound in suppression fields that hummed faintly. He looked diminished without his shuttle, scales dulled, but his eyes held that same unreadable depth. Lena faced him across the interrogation slab, arms folded, the room's sterile lights casting long shadows. "Talk," she said. "Why Luna? What's the play?" Roan leaned forward, chains rattling. "Recon, as I said, but Cerex, Admiral Val Kor sees your quarantine as an insult. A weak world's bluff. The raid tests it, probes for fracture points." Lena's fingers twitched toward her knife hilt. "Fracture points like our people?" His gaze dropped. "The Dominion expands. Empathy slows us. Cerex wants a brutal example. Crush resistance, stabilize the sector. Deterrence won't work, Captain. He'll push until you break, or he does. And if you fight conventional, he'll turn your world against itself." She leaned in, voice low. "Then we adapt. Earth's not some fringe rock." Rowan's mandibles parted in what might have been a grim smile. "Your underground, caves, faults, the mantle's fire. I've seen Cerex's probes, weaponize it, and you trap them in hell. But at what cost? The quakes don't discriminate." Lena straightened, the idea sinking like lead. "Turn the crust into a trap. Aaron's maps come alive. Fault lines as tripwires." Her ruthlessness stirred, the same flaw that had cost lives before, whispering that protection meant no mercy. But Mateo's face flashed in her mind, and she wondered where defense ended. Vengeance began. The door slid open, admitting Sergeant Mia Kovacs. Compact and scarred from flood zone rebuilds back in the Danube Basin, Mia carried her engineer's kit like an extension of her arm. Tools, charges, the weight of homes lost to rising seas. She'd lost her squad once to a proxy incursion, detached herself to survive. Now, assigned as chief engineer, she saluted crisply, but her eyes held a private vow. No more erasures, not on her watch. "Captain," Mia said, voice even, "teams geared, fault line charges calibrated per Hale's specs. We rig the entry points, they land in graves." Lena nodded, clapping her shoulder. "Good. We make it hurt." But as Mia turned to her work, Lena felt the fracture in her own resolve. Rowan's words echoed. Arun's maps burned in. Lena watched the holographic display flicker in the dim glow of the command tent. Arun's fingers dancing over the interface like a pianist, coaxing fury from keys. The map pulsed with projected fault lines, red veins snaking through the subduction zone, off the Pacific Rim. Earth's own underbelly, grinding plates that could birth mountains or swallow cities. Mia crouched beside him, her toolkit splayed open. Grease-streaked hands sketching charge placements on a battered tablet. The air hummed with the low whine of generators, carrying the salt tang of the exclusion zone's fog rolling in from the sea. "We thread the seismic network here," Arun said, his voice steady but edged with that academic caution Lena had come to distrust. He zoomed in on a cluster of unstable strata where the Cathari drop pods were slated to punch down. Charges at these nodes, precision blasts to trigger micro-fractures, then the collapse points cascade, like dominoes in the deep rock. Mia nodded, her eyes narrow under the brim of her cap, wiping sweat from her brow. "Yield's gonna be brutal. Walkers hit that zone and the ground opens like a grave, but we sync the timers tight or it fizzles." She tapped a sequence, simulating the chain reaction, fissures spiderwebbing, tons of earth avalanching into the void below. No glory in it, just the cold math of burial. Lena leaned in, her boots sinking into the damp soil outside the tent flap. The fracture in her resolve deepened with every iteration. Rowan's warnings about Cathari adaptability clashing against Aron's unyielding faith in the planet's bones. "Make it foolproof," she said. "They adapt, we bury them deeper." Her voice came out harder than intended, a veteran's bark masking the knot in her gut. Mateo's face flashed unbidden. His last message, grainy from the field site, promising samples that could map these very faults. She shoved it down. Focus on the enemy. By dawn, the plan solidified. A web of buried charges remote detonated, turning the landing zone into a trapdoor to hell. Lena's unit, 13 souls hardened by proxy wars, geared up in the gray light. Mia slung demo packs over her shoulder. Arun clutched his seismic reader like a talisman. Rowan, wrists bound but eyes sharp, shuffled in their midst, a ghost among warriors. They humped it inland, the exclusion zone's rugged spine rising in jagged ridges of basalt and thorn-choked scrub. Drones buzzed overhead, Earth's skeletal defense net scanning for signatures, but the air felt thick with anticipation, like the hush before a storm breaks bone. The terrain clawed at them, steep inclines slick with mist, ravines that swallowed echoes. Lena crested a ridge first, her rifle slung low, breath fogging in the chill. Below, in a shallow basin ringed by fault-scarred cliffs, tents gleamed white against the mud. Survey markers dotted the ground. Seismic probes humming faintly. Her heart stuttered. Mateo's team, the projected impact area dead center. "Contact," she whispered into her comm, freezing her squad with a raised fist. Through binocs, she spotted figures moving, geologists in hazard suits, hauling core samples from a fresh dig. Mateo's lanky frame bent over a console, his laugh carrying faint on the wind as he bantered with a tech, alive, unaware. "Captain," Mia's voice crackled, low and urgent at her elbow. Lena's jaw tightened. "Civilians, my brother's crew, evac them, quietly." But even as she said it, the math turned sour. The camp sat square on the optimal collapse line. Shifting charges now risked diluting the trap, letting Cathari walkers punch through to the crust. She keyed her comm to command. "Ortiz to base, civilian presence in hot zone. Request immediate extract." Static hissed back, laced with the brass's impatience. "Negative, Captain. Intel confirms inbound hostiles. Windows closing, secure the site." Her grip whitened on the binocs. Mateo, oblivious, waved off a drone flyby. The exclusion zone was supposed to be clear. Surveys halted after the incursion. But here they were, chasing data while the sky darkened with threat. Back at the perimeter outpost, Rowan sat chained to a metal stool in the interrogation bay, the room's harsh lights carving shadows across his angular face. Lena paced outside the one-way glass, arms crossed as the Earth Command liaison, a stone-faced colonel named Reyes, leaned in. Rowan's uniform hung loose, Imperial insignia torn, but his gaze held that fractured pride, eyes flicking to the encrypted pad on the table. Serex's threats, intercepted and decrypted, promises of fire if the traitor spilled more. "You're stalling," Reyes growled, slamming a fist on the table. "Your fleet's probing our nets. What next? Terraform strikes? Give us the play, or we ship you to the front lines as bait." Rowan swallowed, sweat beading on his brow. The pad chimed. Another encrypted burst from Serex, words like "disloyal cur" searing the air between them. Lena watched his shoulders slump, the weight of divided worlds cracking him. "Anchor spires," he muttered finally, voice raw. "They drill them into the crust, massive rigs injecting volatiles to accelerate subduction. Reshapes the geology in days. Your Earth. It becomes habitable for us, hostile for you. Quarantine broken, resources claimed." Reyes's eyes narrowed. "Why tell us now?" Roan's laugh was bitter, eyes meeting the glass as if he saw her. "Because Serex won't stop at conquest. He'll fracture your world to prove a point, and mine with it." Lena turned away, the revelation coiling in her chest like barbed wire, drilling the crust, turning Earth's fury against itself. Arun's maps suddenly screamed relevance. The subduction zone wasn't just a landing pad, it was their goddamn target. Aboard the Cathari boundary cruiser, Vanguard's Edge, Serex Valcor stared at the tactical holosphere, his armored form rigid amid the bridge's hum. Probes confirmed human scrambling, defensive nets tightening, but fractures in their command structure glowed like wounds. The Spearhead strike group idled in low orbit, walkers primed, drilling rigs folded tight. Empathy was a chain, he reminded himself. The Dominion endured by claiming what lesser worlds squandered. "Advance the landing," he ordered, voice like grinding stone. His aide hesitated, optics flickering. "Admiral, projections show human traps." "Precisely." Sarex's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile. "Strike early, unsettle them. Let them overreact, justify our stabilization. Launch." Pods streaked atmosphere, fire trails scarring the dawn. Psychological victory. Show the primitives their soil was no sanctuary. Lena's unit hunkered in overlooks, the basin below a powder keg. Mia crawled through underbrush, rigging the final charges, seismic packs wedged into fissures mere hundreds of meters from Mateo's camp. The proximity gnawed at her. One misfire and the slide took the tents too. Sweat stung her eyes as she buried the last detonator, fingers trembling on the sync wire. "Charges hot," she whispered over comm. "But Captain, this close to the civvies, blast radius overlaps their tunnels." Lena's voice came back, strained. "No choice. Walkers inbound. Scans show 6 rigs deploying. We detonate on my mark or they anchor and it's over." Mia glanced toward the camp, lights flickering in the geodomes. Mateo's team, burrowing deeper for samples, unaware the ground might claim them. She thought of her own squad, the makeshift family forged in floods and fire. Losing them to war was one thing, but this? Rigging death next door? Her hands steadied on the remote. "Charges armed, your call." The sky split with thunder. Cathari pods slammed the basin, hatches hissing open. Armored infantry spilled out, exosuits gleaming, while hulking walkers unfolded. Drill arms whining to life. Rigs punched into soil, anchors biting crust with mechanical hunger. Dust billowed, blotting the camp from view, but not the threat. Lena's scope framed the vanguard, infantry fanning out, probes scanning for traps. Her pulse hammered, Roan's words a dirge, anchor spires reshaping earth. Mateo's laugh echoed in memory, a boyhood echo from safer days. The failed evac years back clawed up, faces lost under her command. Not again, but this. "Detonate," she ordered, thumb depressing the trigger. The world roared. Charges bloomed in sequence, deep rumbles building to a cataclysm. Fissures erupted, ground heaving like a beast roused. The landslide cascaded, boulders tumbling, earth shearing away in tons. Cathari screams cut short as walkers tipped into voids, rigs crumpling under the slide. Infantry vanished in the maelstrom, the basin swallowing whole. Dust choked the air, a gray shroud settling slow. Silence fell, broken only by the groan of settling rock. Lena lowered her scope, chest tight. The camp gone, tents flattened or buried. Tunnels collapsed, probes silent. "Mia, status on civvies?" Static, then Mia's voice, hoarse. "Slide hit hard, beacons out, they're under." Lena's world narrowed to the ache in her throat. The trap worked, spearhead annihilated, no anchors set. Victory earned in blood and bone. But Mateo's fate hung uncertain, a distress ping flickering faint from the rubble, scrambled by aftershocks. She replayed the order, the fracture widening. Defense or the first step to vengeance? Her ruthlessness, once a shield, now poisoned the ground. Aftershocks rippled outward, the earth shuddering like a wound, reopening. Scrambled beacons pulsed erratically from the debris, Mateo's maybe, or ghosts. In orbit, Sarex's voice crackled over intercepted channels, cold as void. Primitives draw first blood, respond with fire, orbital lances, full barrage, fracture their cradle. Lena stared at the devastation. Squad eyes on her, escalate, mirror their ruthlessness, turn traps to scorched earth, or pull back, salvage what's left before earth paid the price. The boundary blurred, her judgment cracked, and the war scarred deeper. Lena's boots crunched over shattered concrete, the air thick with dust that clung to her throat like regret. The quake-ravaged zone stretched out before her, a jagged scar across what used to be farmland on the edge of the quarantined belt. Twisted metal from collapsed silos jutted like broken bones, and the squad fanned out behind her, their rifles low but ready. Mia swept her scanner in tight arcs, while the others marked safe paths through the rubble. No one spoke. The weight of the buried Cathari troops still hung over them, a grim victory that tasted like ash. She couldn't shake the pull in her gut. Mateo, Her brother's transponder signal had flickered out hours ago, right as the seismic charges ripped through the fault line. Command had drones inbound for civilian search and rescue, families from the nearby settlements, geologists like him who'd been mapping the strata for Arun's projects. Lena glanced at her wristcom, the interface glowing faintly under the hazy sun. One tap, and she could redirect a pair of them, just to scan for his signature. It wasn't much, but it was everything. "Captain," Mia said from a few meters off, her voice cutting through the wind. She didn't look up from her work, prying at a slab of earth with a collapsible bar. "Drones are 10 minutes out, Civi priority." Lena nodded, but her fingers moved anyway. She patched into the drone net, overriding the routing with a ghost protocol. Old trick from the border runs, back when proxies hit the outposts. The drones veered silently, their paths curving toward the collapse site where Mateo's team had been drilling. Her heart thudded against her ribs. If command noticed? They did. Her comm buzzed almost immediately, Admiral Reyes' face materializing in harsh hologram light. His eyes narrowed, the lines on his face deeper than usual. "Ortiz, what the hell? Those assets are for the living. We've got reports of survivors in the eastern Habs. Kids, Lena. Not your personal ghost hunt." She kept her voice steady, staring at the rubble as if it held answers. "It's a quick scan, sir. My brother's signal cut during the op. If he's down there, he could have data on the fault shifts. Tactical value." Reyes leaned forward, his breath fogging the projection. "Tactical value? You're stretching. Pull them back, or I'll have you on report for diverting resources during active incursion. We can't afford sentiment when the Dominion's probing the boundary." The line went dead before she could argue. Lena clenched her jaw, watching the drone feeds flicker to life on her display. Faint pings echoed back. Nothing solid yet. Mateo had always been the careful one, the one who mapped risks while she charged them. If he was gone because of her call to bury those troops, Mia appeared at her side, wiping grime from her hands. "He'll chew you out later. Squad's got your back, but we need to move. Arun's calling in from the forward lab. Says the detonation stirred something bad." Lena killed the feeds, forcing her focus. "On me, double time." The forward lab was a reinforced bunker carved into the hillside, its walls humming with seismic monitors. Arun Hale paced the central chamber when they arrived, his lab coat dusted with chalk from the models scattered across the table. Holographic strata layers rotated above, red fault lines pulsing like veins. He looked up as Lena entered, his dark eyes shadowed, fingers twitching as if he'd been arguing with the data for hours. "Captain," he said, voice tight, "you need to see this. The initial blasts, our seismic denial on the incursion point, they didn't just bury the Cathari vanguard. They've sheared a segment of the San Andreas analog here. Look." He swiped the holo, zooming in on a fractured plane snaking southeast. This fault was stable, or close enough, but the charges propagated micro-fractures. Any further seismic play, another ring of detonations, even orbital kinetics, could trigger a cascade. Millions down fault in the coastal cities. Evacuations would take weeks we don't have. Lena leaned in, the squad clustering behind her. The map showed the ripple. From their position, it arced under populated zones, ports jammed with refugees. Her mind raced. Those charges were the backbone of the next defense layer, meant to swallow any ground push whole. But now, Arun's discovery hit like a gut punch. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the simulation, running probabilities. 80% chance of a megaquake if they armed the urban grid. "You're sure?" she asked, though she knew he was. Arun's flaw was precision, the kind that paralyzed when ethics clashed with survival. He met her gaze, swallowing hard. "As sure as the rock tells me, we weaponize the planet or we live on it. But this blurs the line." Before she could respond, the bunker alarms trilled. A priority broadcast intercept. Lena patched it through, the squad tensing as a Cathari signal decrypted. Sarex Valcor's face filled the screen, his angular features calm, almost paternal, against a backdrop of Dominion command decks. But the feed he aired wasn't his words. It was theirs. grainy footage of the buried troops twisted in the earth, looped with human voices dubbed over, wild laughter, taunts about feeding the worms. Manipulated, obviously, their comms chatter twisted into barbarism. Serex's voice overlaid it, smooth and condemning. The quarantined primitives reveal their savagery. They entomb our honorable forces without quarter, desecrating the fallen. The Dominion cannot abide such chaos. A cleansing operation is authorized, stabilization for the boundary worlds. The feed cut, but the damage echoed. Lena's fists balled. He'd turned their desperate trap into propaganda, justifying escalation. The squad muttered, Mia's face hardening. Bastards painting us as monsters to his brass. That fleet inbound? It's not probing anymore. Arun stared at the blank screen, his color draining. If they spin this, the council will push for de-escalation. We can't... A sharp knock cut him off. Rowan Talisar stood in the doorway, the disgraced Cathari envoy's posture rigid, his uniform frayed from captivity. Guards flanked him, but Lena waved them back. He'd been cooperative since capture, feeding scraps on Dominion tactics, but his eyes now held a fracture, something broken loose. Captain Ortiz, he said, voice low, glancing at the squad before stepping closer. I need to speak with you, alone. She nodded, leading him to the adjacent comm room, sealing the door. Roan didn't waste time. He pulled a data sliver from his sleeve, sliding it across the table. Fleet positions. Real-time relays from the boundary beacons. Serex's main force, 3 carriers, 8 destroyers, is crossing now. Descent vectors locked on the western approaches. He's betting on your overreaction to this broadcast. Force a mistake, then glass the weak points. Lena snatched the sliver, plugging it in. The hollow bloomed. Precise orbital paths, weak flanks exposed. Her pulse quickened. This was treason, full break from his chain. Why? Your admiral's playing you as the loyal son. Roan's jaw tightened, imperial pride warring in his eyes. Because he's burning everything. My people, yours. I've seen his ops, empathy's a liability, he says. But this, burying worlds for resources? No. He paused, voice dropping. I questioned expansion once. Cost me my command. Won't cost this planet mine too. She studied him, the divided loyalty raw in his stance. Trusting him risked everything, but the data rang true, cross-checked against their scouts. You're in deep now, Rowan. No going back. He nodded, a ghost of defiance in his gaze. Wasn't going back anyway. Back in the bunker, the weight settled heavier. Mia's comm crackled with new orders from Central Command, routed through Lena. The engineer stepped forward, her face a mask of detachment, but her fingers drummed against her thigh, a tell. Captain, they've greenlit the coastal ring. Full arming under New Haven. Densely packed, 500,000 souls, plus evac routes clogged. It's a kill zone for anything landing, but if it slips... Lena knew the math. Mia's traps had held the line so far, her ingenuity turning Earth into a weapon. But this? Arming charges under a city meant betting on precision in chaos. Mia's eyes flicked to the squad, her found family, guilt flickering behind the pragmatism. Tactical necessity, she said, but it sounded hollow. Or we lose the beachhead. Just who pays if it goes wrong? Everyone, Arun muttered from the console, his paralysis evident as he avoided the order slate. Lena gripped the table edge. Hold pattern for now. We weigh it. The political council's hollow call came next, beaming in from Geneva's bunkers. Faces cycled, diplomats, reps from the arcologies, urgent and polished. The lead envoy, a sharp-eyed woman named Kira Voss, leaned into her feed. Captain Ortiz, the Dominion's broadcast has them spooked. They're offering terms. Limited ground occupation of the quarantine zone. In exchange, recognition of Earth's sovereignty. No more probes, they claim. It's a foothold we can negotiate from. Lena's laugh was bitter, echoing in the bunker. The squad shifted uneasily. Rowan's data still burned in her mind. Occupation on our soil. That's not recognition, that's a leash. Serex wants us fractured, compliant. We accept, and it's precedent. Pray again. Voss's expression hardened. Idealism won't save us from orbital fire. The fault risks, Aaron's report, millions at stake. Compromise now or we all burn. No, Lena said, voice steel. Total denial. They don't touch Earth, not an inch. She cut the link, the room silent. Her choice rippled out. Council would push back. But the squad nodded, camaraderie forged in the grit. Then her wrist comm pinged, a faint, erratic signal. Mateo's transponder, weak, buried deep, but traceable. The cord snapped into focus, a collapsed shaft, straight under the New Haven demolition site, directly in the blast radius of Mia's ring. Lena's world narrowed. The hollow map overlaid it, the charges glowing red around the pinpoint. Evac him, and the plan crumbles. Expose the grid. Invite the descent. Arm it and bury her brother with the invaders. Her breath caught, the scar of that failed evacuation years ago reopening. Civilians lost because she hesitated. Now the boundary blurred again. Defense or vengeance? Mateo's face flashed in her mind, his easy smile amid the rocks. Mia watched her, tool in hand. Captain, we can reroute, but the fleet... Arun's voice broke in, strained. The signals fading, minutes to lock it. Roan stood silent, his betrayal complete, eyes on the descending vectors. Alarms wailed. Serex's main assault fleet had crossed the boundary fully, hulls breaching atmosphere, descent burns lighting the western sky like falling stars. Probes screamed inbound, targeting the coastal weak points. Lena's hand hovered over the arming sequence, the urban fault charges primed. Bury them all, invaders, city, Mateo, or pull back, let the war swallow what was left. Her judgment cracked wider, the cost carving deeper. She locked eyes with the squad, the choice hanging like a blade. Lena's gaze swept the dim command bunker, the squad's faces etched in the flicker of tactical hollows. Dust motes danced in the air vents' hum, carrying the faint tang of ozone from overloaded circuits. Her brother's face flashed in her mind. Mateo, out there in the quake-ravaged hills, his last message a garbled plea for extraction. She couldn't save him if the Cathari rolled unchecked. The blade fell. "Arm the charges," she said, voice steady as rebar. "Full urban fault network. Mia, sink the detonators now. No delays." Arun's projection hovered mid-air, a lattice of seismic lines pulsing red over the coastal sprawl. "Captain, the models don't lie. This will shear a kilometer-wide rift, thousands in the low-rises, civilians, not combatants. We can retarget the outer veins. Buy time." "No." Lena cut him off, her fingers tightening on the console edge until her knuckles blanched. The failed evac on Vega's rim haunted her still, bodies piled in the holds she couldn't seal. Not again, not here. "The Cathari are probing the fault lines already. We hit them hard, or they crack us open. Proceed, Sergeant." Mia's nod came quick, her demo rig already slung over one shoulder, wires snaking from her gauntlet like veins. She didn't meet Arun's eyes, just keyed the arming sequence with a series of sharp taps. The hollows shifted, charges blooming green along the subterranean grid. Charges live in 30. Exfil routes marked for the forward platoon. They'll need to hustle. Arun stood frozen, his xenogeology tablet clutched like a shield. The man's mind raced through strata and stress fractures, but his hands trembled. Earth's bones were his domain, a puzzle of ancient pressures he'd mapped to defend, not destroy. Weaponizing the planet's core felt like vivisecting a patient to save the limb. But Lena's order hung there, unyielding. He waited until the squad dispersed. Mia vanishing into the access tunnels, Lena barking updates to orbital relays, before slipping to the auxiliary panel. The bunker thrummed with distant booms, Cathari probes testing the perimeter. Arun patched into the network via a backdoor subroutine, his fingers flying over the interface. He couldn't defy outright, that would fracture the chain, but he could refine, redirect power flows, cap the yields in the dense wards where refugees huddled. The collapse would narrow, focused on the mechanized thrust. Less devastation, but the enemy would punch through gaps. His gut twisted at the compromise. Ethics or efficacy? The flaw gnawed. He'd always chosen the data over the blood, but here the blood was human. Sweat beaded his brow as he sealed the reconfiguration, the hollows flickering unnoticed in the chaos. Localized, safer, weaker, prey it held. In the shadowed corner of the holding cell, Rowan Talisar hunched over the salvaged comm unit, its casing scarred from the capture skirmish. The humans had left it as a monitored relic, but he'd jury-rigged a burst transmitter hours ago, siphoning power from the bunker's grid. His Imperial uniform hung in tatters, the insignia a mocking reminder of the career he'd torched questioning the Dominion's endless grabs. Serex's escalation, breaching the quarantine without high command sanction, was the fracture point. Rowan had seen the orders, the casual slaughter of that colony. It wasn't conquest, it was frenzy. He keyed the one-shot pulse, coordinates locked to a rival admiral's shadow net. This is Talisar. Serex violates protocol, deploys boundary assets without writ, coordinates attached. He's bleeding the fleet for personal glory. Intervene, or Earth burns, and we with it. The message compressed, fired skyward in an encrypted lance. No reply channel. This was treason's whisper meant to splinter the chain from afar. His pride stung, Cathari honor demanded loyalty, but divided, it choked him. If Serex fell to infighting, the invasion stalled. If not, Rowan leaned back against the cold bulkhead, the cell's hum mocking his gamble. Traitor to both, savior to none. The fear coiled, his name erased in infamy. Aboard the Cathari command cruiser, Serex Valkor's bridge pulsed with the cold efficiency of his fleet. Star charts wheeled overhead, Earth's blue marble scarred by incursion vectors. The admiral paced, his armored boots clanging on the deck, eyes narrowed at the anomaly ping. A leak, subtle, but his countermeasures snared it like a netted fish. Talisar, the disgraced whelp, still breathing defiance from human chains. Trace the burst, Serex snarled to his comms officer, voice a whipcrack. Origin confirmed. The reply came swift. Human custody, coastal bunker. Rowan's words burned on the secondary display. Unauthorized personal glory. Lies, but potent. Rivals would sniff weakness, demand audits. Serex's strategy hinged on swift dominance, probing Earth's fractures until they begged stabilization under Dominion rule. Empathy was the human's rot, he'd excise it with fire. Orbital strike, deep penetration, target the coastal nexus, bunker priority, and mark Talisar for termination. Custody be damned, a drone swarm if needed. His fear flickered, buried deep. A humiliated Dominion invited rebellion from the core worlds. No precedent. The order cascaded, railguns charging with a building whine. Earth's quarantine was a joke. He'd shatter it, then the world beneath. Mia crouched in the forward observation post, the outskirts a jagged ruin of toppled hab blocks and smoldering wrecks. Cathari armor rumbled closer, hulking treaded behemoths, flanked by drill towers boring into the earth, seeking bypasses under the urban sprawl. Her squad's forward platoon was pulling back, shadows darting through the debris, but the exfil was tight. She checked her gauntlet, modified pattern synced, a rune's tweaks invisible but felt in the yield caps. The vulnerable districts spared, but the corridor narrower, riskier for her people. Platoon, status? She whispered into the comm, spotting Private Ellis in the lead. Young, wiry, the one who'd shared ration packs and bad jokes during the siege drills. He'd become the brother she never had, his laugh cutting through the unit's grim silences. Ellis, you're clear, move. The response crackled. Almost out, Sarge. Keth's on our 6. Detonate. Mia slammed the trigger. The ground answered with a guttural roar, the fault line erupting in a chain of muffled thunderclaps. Stone churned upward, a sinkhole yawning wide along the invasion axis. Cathari columns plunged, drill towers shearing as Earth swallowed them whole, treads spinning futilely in the abyss, comms erupting in alien shrieks. The corridor collapsed in a cascade of rubble and dust, burying mechanized fury under tons of fractured bedrock. But the forward platoon... Mia's breath caught. The edge of the sink caught them mid-stride. Ellis's silhouette vanished in the slide, a scream cut short by the grind of stone. Others tumbled after, 3, 4 markers winking red on her HUD. The urban core held, lights flickering but intact in the distance. Saved. At what price? She staggered forward, boots slipping on the trembling lip, calling names into the void. Ellis's pack lay half-buried, a strap trailing like a lifeline snapped. Guilt she'd buried deep surged, hot and choking. Detached? Not anymore. The found family she'd armored herself against, cracked open. Mia punched the earth, tears mixing with grit as the dust settled on a graveyard corridor. Serex's fury ignited on the bridge, the strike feeds showing the chasm where his vanguard should have been. A sinkhole. Human trickery, yes, but the leak, Talisar's poison, had forced his hand early, drawing eyes from the core. Political knives sharpened, the setback burned. Earth's primitives turning geology against him, like vermin gnawing the foundation. Super heavy commit, he barked, overriding protests. Low orbit burn, direct on the fault nexus. Crack that plate, let their world feel the Dominion's correction. The super dreadnought's engines flared, a behemoth descending, weapons bays irising open. The tectonic stress reading spiked on his console, Earth's crust already groaning from the charges, quakes rippling outward. One barrage could fracture it wide, but the backlash... Serex ignored the warnings. Precedent demanded it. Humiliate them utterly or watch his command unravel. In the bunker, the walls shuddered as Arun burst back into the command center, hollows screaming overload. Lena whirled, face ashen from the platoon reports. Mia's voice had cracked over comms, naming the dead. The super dreadnought's shadow loomed on orbital scans, its burn trail scarring the sky. Earth's crust groaned audibly now, a deep tectonic moan vibrating through the footings, aftershocks from the collapse compounding the strain. "We can't take that hit," Arun said, slamming his tablet down. His reconfiguration had bought the core, but this? Planetary wound. His paralysis shattered, ethics be damned if it meant extinction. "I've got a play. Lure it lower. Use the magma vents we mapped under the rift. Rig a counterpulse. Vent superheated plumes right into its underbelly. Cripple the dreadnought. Maybe chain react their fleet if we're lucky." Lena's eyes narrowed, the ruthlessness in her warring with the cost. Mateo's face again, buried in the hills. And Earth? Scarred, permanent, but we turn the planet's fury back on them. Arun met her stare, his arc bending, scientist to saboteur. The choice loomed, blade sharper than before. Lena's eyes lingered on the holographic display, the jagged lines of Earth's undersea trenches glowing like veins under pale skin. Aaron's words hung in the dim command bunker, the air thick with the hum of recycled oxygen and the faint tang of sweat. Scarred. Permanent. But we turn the planet's fury back on them. She could feel the weight of it settling in her chest, heavier than the rucksack she'd carried through a dozen proxy wars. Arun met her stare, his arc bending, scientist to saboteur. The choice loomed, blade sharper than before. He leaned forward, fingers tracing the projection's edge, his voice steady but laced with the hesitation of a man who'd spent years mapping rock instead of breaking it. The Mariana Trench chain, it's not just deep, it's alive. Magma vents pulse under the pressure, held back by tectonic locks. We plant shaped charges along the floor, synchronized to a hair's breadth, detonate them in sequence, and we force a breach. Superheated water, steam, molten rock. It'll erupt as a focused plume straight up through the atmosphere. If Serex's flagship drops into low orbit over the right corridor, it'll hit like a lance from below. No shields can handle that kind of thermal overload at point blank. Lena crossed her arms, the scar on her forearm itching under the sleeve. A reminder of the evacuation she'd botched years ago, bodies left in the dust. Turning Earth into a weapon felt like crossing a line she'd sworn never to touch, but the Cathari had already painted that line in human blood. And if they don't descend? Or if the plume scatters? Arun's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the data stream scrolling beside the hologram. Seismic readings, orbital projections, the relentless advance of the boundary fleet. Then we lose the shot. But their doctrine favors close assaults on weakened plates. Serex wants to crack us open, not poke from afar. This gives us the angle. She nodded once, the decision crystallizing amid the bunker's low rumble. No time for doubt. Mateo was out there, his last ping from a survey rig too close to the incursion zone. She tapped her comm, pulling up the secure line to Earth Command. The approval came grudgingly, voices crackling over the link like gravel under boots. "High risk doesn't cover it, Ortiz," Admiral Reyes barked from the orbital relay, his face a grid of static and fatigue. "You're talking planetary surgery with a sledgehammer. One wrong cut, and you flood half the Pacific Basin." "Understood," Lena replied, her tone flat, unyielding. "But Cerex is probing the eastern plate now. If we don't hit him hard, he'll glass the colonies before reinforcements arrive. This stays contained, far from populations. No deviations, even if he dangles the bait." A pause, heavy as the void outside. "Approved, but if it backfires, it's on you, and keep it clean. No escalation beyond the target." The link died, leaving the bunker in silence broken only by the whir of cooling vents. Lena turned to Arun, who exhaled like a man surfacing from deep water. "It's yours now. Make it count." Rowan Talisar shifted in the corner, his Cathari frame hunched under the human restraints, scales dulled by weeks in captivity. The disgraced envoy's eyes, sharp, golden slits, fixed on the hologram, a ghost of imperial pride warring with the shame that had landed him here. Lena watched him, weighing the risk of trusting a man who'd once served the enemy he now dissected. "You want Cerex's playbook," she said, sliding a tablet his way. "Talk." Rowan hesitated, his clawed fingers flexing against the cuffs. Betrayal tasted like ash, he knew. His own people would brand him traitor, and these humans might still execute him if the war turned sour. But the Dominion's hunger had already consumed too much. He'd questioned it once, paid for it with exile. Now, with Earth burning, silence felt like complicity. Their targeting doctrine is predictive, not random. Cerex commands from the Varric's shadow. He'll position for maximal psychological impact. Low orbit, aligned with seismic faults to amplify ground strikes. The corridor over the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, it's ideal. High visibility, direct line to the plate's weak points. He'll drop there to broadcast the kill. Arun leaned in, cross-referencing the data. "And if you're off, we miss, they retaliate, full orbital barrage." Roan's gaze hardened, divided loyalty twisting like a knife. "I'm not. Cerex fears precedence. He wants Earth humbled, not just conquered. That position lets him dictate terms from the ruins." He paused, voice dropping. "If I'm wrong, you die. If I'm right, so does he." Lena held his stare, seeing the fracture in the man, the officer who'd risen on conquest now gambling on its end. "Then pray you're right." She uncuffed one hand, sliding the tablet fully into his grasp. Trust was a gamble, but surrender wasn't an option. Days blurred into a grind of preparation. The task force splintered across shadowed ops. Mia Kovacs led the dive team from the submersible's cramped bay, her breath steady in the hiss of rebreathers. The combat engineer moved like she was born to the depths. Her squad, a skeleton crew of 4, hardened techs from Lena's unit, faces smeared with conductive gel under hoods. No room for error. The charges were monsters, each the size of a cargo pod, packed with composites that could fracture bedrock. "Depth 2,000 meters, Mia's voice cut through the comms, calm as she checked the harness. "Trenches are stable for now. Plant and pull back. Timing's everything." Her team fanned out along the trench floor, the sub's lights carving ghosts from the abyssal black. Pressure crushed in on the hull like an endless fist, but Mia thrived in it. Traps and barriers had kept her alive since the floods stole her home, turning grief into precision. She hefted the first charge, mag-locking it to Event's rim, her fingers dancing over the sequencer. Motive clear, keep the squad breathing, but the flaw gnawed. Detachment that let her bury the faces of the fallen until the guilt piled like unexploded ordnance. The malfunction hit at the final site, a hairline fracture in the casing, sparking erratically. Alarms blared in her helmet, red warnings flashing, sync failure imminent. The team was already ascending, extraction window closing as currents tugged at the sub. "Go," Mia ordered, voice iron. "I'll fix it." "Negative, Sarge," her second protested, static-laced panic edging in. "You're not—" "That's an order. Get clear." She knelt in the silt, tools out, ignoring the burn in her lungs. Staying meant risking the hole up, but pulling back meant the plume scattered, Serex untouched. Her found family, the unit that had become her anchor, depended on this. Guilt flickered a shadow under the resolve, but she shoved it down. One more trap, one more life bought. The fix held, barely, a jury-rigged bypass that synced the charge to the chain. Mia sealed it, the trench's groan vibrating through her suit as she triggered the emergency beacon. The sub's lights faded upward, leaving her in the dark, waiting for pickup that might not come in time. Up top, Lena paced the command deck of the stealth frigate, eyes on the orbital feed. Serex's super dreadnought, the Varrock, loomed like a predator descending, its hull a brutal wedge of alloy and plasma vents, escort wings fanning out in formation. The wounded plate below scarred the Pacific, craters from prior strikes smoking under cloud cover. "Decoys surge now," Lena snapped. Her unit's techs routed power through submerged relays, faking a massive energy bloom from the plate's core defenses. It was bait, crude but effective, mimicking a desperate counter-battery buildup. The Varrock bit. Serex's ship dipped into low orbit, thrusters flaring as it aligned over the undersea boundary, weapons hot. Lena's pulse hammered, the comms alive with Roan's confirmation. "He's in position, doctrine exact." In the bunker, Arun's hands hovered over the trigger console, sweat beading despite the chill. The feeds showed Mia's beacon pulsing, alive, but pinned. His stomach twisted. Weaponizing the planet's guts meant choices like this, ethics crumbling under necessity. But hesitation now doomed them all. He slammed the sequence. Deep below, the charges ignited in a ripple of thunder. The trench floor split, bedrock shattering under directed force. Magma vents erupted, superheated water flashing to steam in an instant, pressure wave hurling a colossal column skyward. Magma-laced fury, miles high, a plume of hell breaching the waves. The Varrock never fired. The plume struck like a god's spear, slamming into its underbelly. Shields flared brilliant, then buckled under the thermal assault. Superheated ejecta-melting armor, venting atmosphere in fiery gouts. Explosions chained through the hull. Escort ships caught in the fringes, shredding apart in blooms of debris. Serex's flagship listed, secondary blasts ripping it asunder, the command bridge vanishing in a silent inferno. Lena watched the feed, breath caught as the plume dissipated into the stratosphere. Victory raw and jagged, but the cost rippled outward. Waves surged from the breach, tsunamis building with merciless speed. Coastal defenses crumpled, outposts along the Kurils vanishing under walls of water, comms arrays sparking out in the flood, global feeds lit with alerts, weather patterns fracturing, jet streams twisting into storms that howled across hemispheres. And then, the personal blow. Mateo's relay went dark, his last coordinates swallowed by the impact zone's chaos. Severed, gone, or worse. Arun staggered back from the console, face ashen, the scientist's paralysis hitting like aftershock. "We did it, but the damage—" Lena gripped the console, knuckles white, the ruthlessness she'd embraced now a mirror cracking. Serex presumed dead. The fleet in disarray, reinforcements vectoring in from the outer system, their signatures blooming on long-range scans. Pursuit tempted, total retaliation a siren's call to make the Dominion pay in kind. Or peace, fragile, built on the graves of coasts and kin. The boundary blurred, defense bleeding into vengeance, and she wondered if humanity could stop at survival, or if the scars would demand more. Lena's fingers dug into the console's edge, the metal cool and unyielding under her palms. The bridge hummed with subdued urgency, scans flickering as Cathari reinforcements curved in from the system's fringes, their drive signatures like distant thunderheads. Serex's flagship was gone, swallowed by the quake she'd triggered, but victory tasted like ash. Mia's face flashed in her mind, the engineer's last grin before the shaft collapsed, her squad's found family fractured. The coasts she'd drowned to bury the invaders lay silent now, waterlogged graves for friend and foe alike. Pursuit clawed at her thoughts. A chance to hit them while they reeled, but the council's summons blinked insistent on her screen. Peace or payback? The line between defender and avenger thinned with every breath. She straightened, ignoring the ache in her shoulders, and patched into the secure link. The holographic chamber materialized around her, Earth's council arrayed in stern profiles, diplomats in crisp suits, generals with scarred jaws, scientists clutching data slates. High Chancellor Alara Voss dominated the center, her gray eyes sharp as she leaned forward. "Captain Ortiz," Voss began, voice clipped over the latency. "The Dominion's envoys have signaled through neutral channels. They're offering withdrawal terms. Hand over the Cathari prisoner, Rowan Talisar, for trial as a war criminal. In exchange, they pull back to the boundary and recognize the quarantine, for now." Murmurs rippled through the holograms. Lena's jaw tightened. Rowan, the disgraced officer who'd turned coat mid-incursion, spilling intel that saved her unit more than once. Traitor to his empire, but to them? A bridge, fragile as it was. She glanced at the feed from the holding cell below decks, where Rowan sat chained, his iridescent skin dulled under the lights, eyes fixed on nothing. "And if we refuse?" Lena asked, keeping her tone even though heat coiled in her chest. Voss's expression hardened. "We buy time. The fleet's in chaos without Sarex, but reinforcements are inbound. We can't afford another wave. Talisar's head on a platter stabilizes the boundary. It's not vengeance, it's survival." A general nodded, his uniform starched. "Our probes show their boundary fleet fracturing, succession squabbles, but they want blood for the Admiral. Give it to them." Lena's mind raced. Handing Roan over meant painting a target on every defector, every whisper of doubt in the Dominion's ranks. It meant admitting the cost of her quakes, the drowned cities, was negotiable. She opened her mouth to argue, but the chamber's door hissed behind her. Aaron Hale stepped onto the bridge, his geologist's coat dusted with seismic residue, face drawn from nights in the labs. He caught her eye, a silent question, and she muted her feed, briefly. "They're pushing for Roan," she murmured, Arun's brow furrowed. "Let me talk to him first. There's more at play here." She nodded, unmuting as Voss pressed. "Captain, your response?" Before Lena could reply, the bridge comm crackled. "Ma'am, prisoner requests audience. Says it's urgent, about the succession." Voss's hologram flickered with impatience. "Patch him in, but this changes nothing." Roan's image joined the council feed, his chains rattling as he shifted. The Cathari's voice was steady, laced with that alien timbre that hummed like distant engines. "Chancellor, captains, Sarex's death isn't just a loss, it's a fracture. His lieutenants are vying for command. The fleet's supply lines are exposed, an outlying hub in the asteroid belt, undefended now. Strike there, and you cripple their regrouping, or accept armistice. They're offering it because they fear what you did to the Admiral's pride." The council erupted in low debate. Lena leaned in, studying Rowan's face for deceit. His eyes met hers, holding steady, the weight of his divided loyalties plain. Imperial pride warred with the guilt of his sidelining, the questions he'd asked too loudly about expansion's toll. "Why tell us?" she pressed. "Because if you hand me over, they execute me quietly and claim victory. Your quakes humiliated them. Sarex probed for weakness, forced your hand. Now his hubris dooms his successors. Windows narrow, 48 hours before they consolidate." Voss silenced the chatter. "Armistice means no more incursions. We rebuild. Captain Ortiz, your thoughts?" Lena hesitated, the bridge's hum fading as Arun stepped closer, his voice low but carrying to the feed. "Accept it. Mia's gone because we pushed the crust too far. Quake's aftershocks are cracking the plates. Atmospheres laced with particulates from the breaches. Vengeance chases ghosts. We stabilize what's left." Arun's words hit like aftershocks themselves. Lena saw it in his eyes, the paralysis gripping him, the scientist torn between ethics and the weapon he'd helped forge. He'd mapped the strata, turned Earth's bones into traps. But Mia's sacrifice haunted him, the coasts submerged in retaliation's flood. His motive burned clear: prove the planet's geology a shield, not a sword. Yet doubt etched his face, the fear of architecting more ruin. She wanted to snap back, to say survival demanded the strike, but the personal toll gnawed. Matteo, her brother, the geologist trapped near the first incursion site. Rumors of his shaft collapse had dogged her for weeks, but no body, no closure. Was this armistice a chance to search, or just delay? The session dragged, voices overlapping, generals for the hub strike, diplomats for peace. Lena's private comm buzzed then, an encrypted burst from field recon. She stepped aside, heart slamming as she decrypted it. Grainy imagery, a collapsed shaft in the incursion zone, rescuers pulling debris. Then the confirmation, Matteo's ID tag, embedded in twisted rock. Body recovered, mangled but identified, caused secondary quake from the defenses she'd authorized. The world tilted. Lena gripped the bulkhead, breath shallow. Matteo's laugh echoed, his easy grin during shore leave. The brother she'd failed to evacuate years back in a proxy skirmish. That failure had forged her ruthlessness, made her vow Earth untouchable. But now, burying fleets had buried him too. Was this defense or vendetta? Her choices rippling out like seismic waves, turning protection into extermination. Tears pricked, hot and unwelcome. She blinked them back, the council's debate a distant roar. She returned to the feed, voice steel despite the fracture inside. No, we don't hand over Roan. He's given us the intel to end this on our terms. Voss's eyes narrowed. Captain, Lena cut her off, already signaling the comms officer. Broadcast prep, open channel to the boundary. The bridge tensed as the array spooled up, targeting Cathari frequencies. Rowan watched her, surprise flickering, his own fears mirrored. Traitor to both sides, legacy in tatters. Arun placed a hand on her arm, a silent anchor, but she shrugged it off gently. This was hers. The broadcast went live, her face projected across the void, stern and unyielding. To the Cathari Dominion, this is Captain Lena Ortiz, commander of Earth's defense forces. I claim full responsibility for the burial of Admiral Serex Valcor and his fleet. We turned our world against you as you turned yours against the quarantined. Cross the boundary again and you'll face worse. Every shaft, every fault line, every drowned shore. Earth is no prey. Withdraw or learn the cost. Static hissed as the message lanced out, then silence. The council feed exploded. Voss's fury, general's shock. Ortiz, stand down. That's provocation. But it was done. Lena killed the link, turning to her crew. Secure the prisoner. Prep for any response. Hours blurred into tension. Reports trickled. Cathari signals spiking, but no advance. Then the hammer fell. Earth Command's directive, patched direct from Geneva. Captain Lena Ortiz, you are relieved of field authority effective immediately. For insubordination and escalation of hostilities, report for debrief. She stared at the words, the bridge crew averting eyes. Arun met her gaze, his own relief shadowed by sorrow, Mia's ghost between them, the coast's silence a judgment. Roan, unchained now under guard, nodded faintly from his cell feed. You bought the armistice, Captain, at a price. Negotiations unfolded without her, envoys shuttling terms through neutral relays. The Dominion, stung by her broadcast, acknowledged the de facto boundary. No further incursions in exchange for silence on Serex's fate. No trials, no reparations. Earth stood scarred, coastlines redrawn by flood, crust fractured, atmosphere hazy with quake dust. Unoccupied but forever altered, Lena's unit dispersed, reassigned. She walked the corridors like a ghost, Matteo's tag heavy in her pocket, a talisman of what defense had cost. Weeks later, the air still carried the tang of unsettled earth. Lena and Arun stood at the edge of the new memorial, a stark obelisk of fused rock rising over the quake zone. Wind whipped off the inland sea that had swallowed the old coast. carrying salt and regret. Carved names marched up the stone, Mia Kovac's prominent, Mateo's below it, alongside thousands. No fanfare, just quiet placement, the ground still rumbling faintly underfoot. Arun shifted beside her, hands in pockets, his coat frayed from lab shifts. Stabilization's underway, plates are holding, for now, but the example, it's spreading. Lena nodded, eyes on the horizon where recon drones hummed. Reports had filtered in, frontier worlds, human outposts on the edge of Dominion space, querying Earth's archives. Resistance cells on distant rocks, digging traps into their own strata, shafts rigged for collapse, fault lines weaponized, whispers of Earth's method, cells naming ops after the quakes, humanity's ingenuity, turning planets into fortresses, reshaping the war's calculus. No grand alliance, just quiet emulation, worlds learning to bury invaders in their bones. She touched the obelisk, tracing Mateo's name. The ruthlessness she'd embraced stared back, a mirror of hard-won survival. Rumors grew, those cells invoking her broadcast, daring the Dominion with warnings of burial. Crossing a boundary now meant risking it everywhere, every world that had learned from what humanity did. Lena wondered if she'd forged a shield or a curse. Defense etched in scars, vengeance's echo lingering. The wind carried no answers, only the weight of what came next.